Good afternoon. Hi. I'm Sharon Lee, and I'm the director of the Low Income Housing Institute, or LIHI. I want to welcome you to Gossett Place, and I wanted to let you know that if you go outside, you'll see the lettering, Gossett Place. Yesterday, it actually said Gossett House. They got it wrong, so they had to redo all the lettering. And we said, no, we cannot wait a week. You got to put it up right away. So thank you very much for attending this event. I wanted to take care of some sort of basic things. First is that we are offering a tour. There are units. There's a unit on the first floor, and then there's 2 units on the 5th floor, and then there's a roof deck. And if you go to the back, there's a computer lab, a laundry room, a classroom, and then along this wall are counseling offices for Sound Mental Health, our service partner. And in the back here are refreshments. You will see, let's see, we have cupcakes and goodies. So, and then the restrooms are around the corner, down this way. Okay, so welcome. There are a couple seats up here if you would, people want to sit up here. I wanted to thank everybody for coming. It is remarkable that this is the quickest we have ever gotten a project funded and constructed. If you look at our program, one of the features is that it was shovel ready. So we were one of the few projects that we got like sort of the last of the Housing Trust Fund money. But it was going to be a boutique hotel, and so we purchased it with the land and the permits in place. And the boutique hotel has kitchens and bathrooms, so we kept the plans. So the only thing we changed was we do not have 3 floors of underground parking, because that was going to be part of the boutique hotel. And the city council and the city had the wisdom to say that if we're close to transit, we're very close to the Brooklyn Street U District transit station, that we're in the transit overlay, so we do not have to put all this underground parking. But we do have parking for staff and handicap parking below. So I wanted to, because we have a wonderful program, I wanted to quickly introduce Melinda Nichols, who's the LIHI board president, who is then going to introduce King County Executive Dow Constantine.
This is a tremendously special moment for me and for other LIHI board members in the room as we celebrate LIHI's 20th anniversary this year with the opening of this new building. And at this time, can LIHI board members please stand and be recognized? We are thrilled and honored to dedicate this wonderful, green, and affordable housing in Seattle's University District after Larry Gossett. The 63 units will provide permanent, supportive housing linked with services to homeless young adults aged 18 to 25 and other homeless singles and couples. As president of the LIHI board and speaking on behalf of the entire board, we didn't want to name our building after corporations like Safeco Field or Quest Field. We wanted to name our building after real champions and heroes in the community who are not afraid to be outspoken, who fought for civil rights and human rights in Seattle. You'll recognize the names of some other of LIHI's buildings: Tyree Scott Apartments, Aki Karosi Village, Denise Hunt Townhomes, Frank Chop Place, Martin Court, McDermott Place. Given LIHI's 20 years of advocacy on housing and justice issues, our work to house the poorest of the poor, it's fitting that we name this building Gossett Place after our hero, Larry Gossett. And I also want to say we wanted to name a facility after Larry for a long time. And when this one came up, Sharon said, this is the one. This is in the University District. This is going to serve young people. And this is the one for us, and our board unanimously agreed. Other speakers will talk about Larry's outstanding legacy serving the community. I just wanted to say a few words personally about when I first met Larry Gossett, which he will not remember. I was at the UW in the late 60s, a child prodigy, and I heard Larry speak, and he told people to march up and down the street, and I was one of the ones who did. And I can tell you, if he told us to march up and down the street today, we would still do it, just a little slower than we did then. I would also like to say that this was one of the most special occasions that all of us at LIHI feel that we've joined the perfect kind of union of this name and this person with our local community. He is our local hero, and we're really grateful that you accepted this honor and that you allowed us to name this building after you. I'd also now like to introduce King County Executive Dow Constantine and invite him up here to speak. We are most grateful to Dow and to the county council's leadership recently in putting veterans and homeless service levy on the August ballot. The levy received close to 70% approval by the voters, which is wonderful, and will continue to fund valuable projects such as Gossett Place. Not only does the levy help with construction costs, but it also provides multi-year services funding for mental health and case management for homeless veterans and others. We also thank Dow, who is a leader on the Sound Transit Board, for ensuring that the Sound Transit East Link route avoids going through LIHI's site in Bellevue. And we know that's why you did it. This will allow LIHI to develop 57 units of new affordable housing in downtown Bellevue. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dow.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be here today, and this is a room full of energy, and it is very fitting as today we gather for the grand opening of Gossett Place. King County is pleased to join the City of Seattle, State of Washington, the Housing Authority, Seattle Housing Authority, and other wonderful partners in creating this great project. And we're pleased to once again collaborate with the Low Income Housing Institute and Executive Director Sharon Lee. For more than 20 years, LIHI has provided housing and services for the most vulnerable in our community. Thank you, LIHI, for your leadership. Gossett Place is a significant project for Seattle and King County. It ties directly to the goals of our 10-year plan to end homelessness by creating housing for two groups of people who really need our help: homeless young adults and homeless veterans. With this housing, we will get young people off the streets and moving forward on a path to healthier lives and futures. And we can help veterans who've fallen on hard times or struggled to reintegrate into the community by offering housing and the supportive services that give them a chance to stabilize their lives. In doing so, we honor their sacrifice and their service to our country. Gossett Place is not a shelter. It is permanent housing linked with supportive services that move us closer to the goal of ending homelessness, a goal that the 10-year plan and the King County strategic plan and our entire region share. King County was pleased to provide more than $533,000 in capital funding and another $250,000 in operating funds through the Veterans and Human Services Levy to ensure the necessary supportive services in this place. I want to take this opportunity, along with you, to thank the voters of King County for their resounding approval of the levy for the next 6 years by a margin of nearly 70%. Council Chair Gossett, Councilmember Ferguson, who helped originate that legislation, but also leaders from our cities throughout this county have championed the first levy and this renewal. And the fact that the people of King County in these times vote by 70% to tax themselves to fulfill our commitment to veterans and others in need, I think says a lot about what kind of community we live in. There are other reasons to celebrate this facility. Gossett Place was built green and designed for long-term energy efficiency. It offers residents a vital link to the community. There's nearby shopping, there's nearby services, and there's a lot of access to public transit. And this is a non-smoking facility. It will ensure healthy air quality indoors and encourage healthier living. But now, the reason I'm most proud to be here this afternoon at this particular celebration is to join the Low Income Housing Institute in honoring my friend and colleague, Larry Gossett. Before becoming King County Executive, I had the privilege of serving on the County Council for 8 years with Larry Gossett. And there is no one in King County who is more to be admired. Larry has served for 18 years on the council as a tireless advocate for social and racial justice, and as you heard from his days in the 1960s, literally himself as a high school student and activist for civil rights, to his work today as the leader of the King County Council. Larry Gossett has strived to ensure that those most vulnerable in our community have a voice, and not just here in the core of progressive Seattle, but in every corner of King County. He has fought for equal education and equal opportunities for all of our residents. He's fought for housing and to improve access to health care and mental health and substance abuse treatment for people with little or no resources. He has served this community with integrity and with commitment, and perhaps most of all with passion and heart. He's challenged us to work together to find the solutions that will make our communities and our people stronger. Larry was the leader behind the movement to rename our county for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And I want to share this quote from Dr. King. Make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for civil rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, a finer world to live in. I believe this speaks to the contribution that Larry Gossett has made to our region. I applaud LIHI for recognizing him in the naming of this building, Gossett Place. And I want to congratulate Larry for this well-deserved tribute to his years of community service, and congratulations to LIHI on the completion of this magnificent project. Thank you very much. And I know Sharon is trying to hand me a plaque. But before we do that, the King County Executive and the Chair of the King County Council want to hand Sharon a plaque. Councilmember Gossett, if you can hold this and I'll read it for the folks. This housing was made possible in part by the Veterans and Human Services Levy approved by the citizens of King County. Thank you, and this will be with you forever. Thanks so much. Thank you.
This is made from recycled products.
Oh, wonderful. It's a built green plaque. That's really nice. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to go get one of those cupcakes you were talking about.
Well, we have a wonderful speaker that was one of the original founders of LIHI. We have House Speaker Frank Chop. I want to introduce Frank up here.
This is great to be here. It's quite an honor, and particularly because about half the room I've personally worked with over the years, and so we have a lot of friends here. I do want to point out a few folks just to start before I get into my short remarks. One, I'd like to introduce Representative Sharon Santos. Please stand there, Sharon. Let's hear for Sharon. And I think this person will be later on the agenda, but let's hear it for Senator Ed Murray as well. Among all the folks that I've worked with over the years, I just want to point out one person. That's Alan Castle. Alan was there. Yeah, please stand up. He's a board member of LIHI. And I think we were there at the very first meeting, it seems, along with Michael Reichert from County Community Services and others. But Alan's been a tireless champion on veterans issues, homelessness issues, and someday we might name a building after you. We'll call it Castle, by the way. I don't have authority to do that, but I also want to thank. Yes, I just really appreciate all the work you've done, Alan. I also want to thank Sharon. Sharon's been an absolutely tremendous advocate. When we started LIHI, I never thought we'd have such things to point to in terms of the accomplishments. In our legislative district, Ed, I think we've got 65 housing trust fund projects. Many of them were actually done as a result of Sharon's effort. And if you ever want somebody on your side who's as tenacious as you could possibly imagine, it's Sharon Lee. Let's hear for Sharon Lee. That's great, polite applause, as I usually say. When I say something about Larry at the end there, you all got to stand up and just cheer for this guy, because he deserves it. I consider myself a great friend of Larry. It's a great honor to be here today, Larry. And then I thought, I thought I'd talk about why it's so appropriate to name this facility at this location after Larry Gossett. First one is because it's housing for poor people, for people that need some help. And Larry used to be the head of the Central Area Motivation Program, did an outstanding job there, caring for all sorts of folks in the community that need a helping hand. So that's the first thing. The second thing, it's in the U District, and as mentioned before, Larry organized a whole ton of students at the University of Washington. And I came a little later than that, but I benefited from your advocacy, so I really want to honor you for that. And thirdly, it's very appropriate to have a protest outside because Larry Gossett led lots of protests. So everybody up, let's hear it for Larry Gossett.
I also want to introduce a number of public officials who are here with us today. We have Bruce Harrell from the Seattle City Council. We have Nate Camino from Senator Cantwell's staff. Nate, are you here? And I wanted to let you know that Senator Cantwell is sponsoring legislation to continue the low-income housing tax credit program, of which Seattle has benefited tremendously from tax credit investments, and we would hate to lose that resource for affordable housing. And then we also have Deborah Anteman from Congressman Adam Smith's office. Thank you. Next, I wanted to introduce Ann Malone from U.S. Bank. And U.S. Bank provided the construction financing for this project.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here today to congratulate LIHI on providing 62 new affordable housing units in our University District community. Once again, you've gone above and beyond to house our citizens in a way that's safe, healthy, green, and beautiful. And how wonderful to name the building in honor of Larry Gossett, who's been such a champion for affordable housing in our region. U.S. Bank is proud to have been your partner in the construction financing for Gossett Place and your banking partner, supporting all of your organizational priorities. And as such, today I'm thrilled to be able to present to you on behalf of U.S. Bank a grant for $5,000. So thank you for continuing to pursue your mission and make Seattle a better place for all of us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I have a clap for you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, now this, I want everyone to pay close attention. We are half full in terms of leasing up. The first resident to move in was a young man who had been homeless since he was 12. and he couldn't wait for us to open the building. So when we opened our doors, he slept outside to make sure that he had a place here. So right now, I want to introduce our resident speaker. It's Terry Shelton and Diane Shelton, and they have moved in the last few weeks. And by the way, we have 300 applicants for the 62 spaces, and we're half full, and we wish we had more. Yeah. So, Terry, thank you for agreeing to speak. Terry,
wow. Hi, y'all. First off, I'd like to start by welcome to our new home. Me and my wife were homeless here in the U District for 18 years. We've slept in every alley. The Red Light made a deal with us years ago where we would sleep in their storefront as long as we were there after they closed, be gone by the time they opened. And we made a lot of deals with the restaurants on the avenue where I would sweep up, they'd let us eat. We could go to the movie theater if I swept up, and they'd give us buttered popcorn. And, you know, we know the U District very well. And we were under a tree, and these people from the REACH program came down and said, hey, would you like to go indoors, you know? And we've dealt with the REACH program over the years a lot. And I said, sure. So we went through all the paperwork and stuff. And when we came here and moved in, we just looked around, and I am just blown away. Yeah, to be out there that long, you know, it's not easy once you get used to being out there to be around a whole lot of people. And, you know, this is really weird. But
you have to remember my husband in the vet, too.
Yeah. It's true they're helping disabled veterans because I am one. So, but now it's just unbelievable to have a home and a place to stay. It's a feeling. It seems like we've moved in right before the first, and every day that goes by, we're just getting more of a homey. You know, when we first moved in, we had this weird, because, you know, when you're on the streets, you rent a room for a week, and then you got to go back out, and we're actually home for good.
I like to say also, too, that is that not only does this place feel like a home and very comfortable, you know, just smooth sailing, is that the people that created this, the people that are here all the time, hey, what do you got? You come down to the TV room, we got a big TV right there. If you want to cook something here, you can, you know, come back down with some friends and all that. It's just wonderful. And you know what? It filled my heart, so I'm not scared to be alone out there no more because I don't have to be. And thank you, God.
She says, okay, let's go. I'd just like to say one more thing. Thank all of you people that made this possible. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And this is going to be a hard act to follow, Mr. Mayor. Come on up.
Aren't you supposed to start with the inexperienced acts and work your way up to the superstars? You know, you guys are just reversing. Doesn't the garage band go on before the Beatles, right? Instead of the other way around. I just want to say, yeah, no, I've got my thank yous, but I can't top the thank yous that we just heard. Thank you. So, but got to do them anyway. You know, first of all, we thank the voters of King County for voting for the levy. And there's a subset of voters here in Seattle who voted for that levy and voted for another one here in Seattle, too. I mean, it starts right there. Again, midst of the greatest recession since the Great Depression, and the voters of Seattle voted to tax themselves to help those less fortunate themselves. And that really makes a difference. Thank you to LIHI The work you do is just fabulous, and it's the work of a lot of people in this room. I see the people I know, in the Committee to End Homelessness, which I participate in, state legislators, board members, volunteers. Every one of you in this room, I'm sure, can point to a tangible action that you have taken to help make things like this happen. So just thank you to all of you. It means a lot. I want to talk just a second or two about Larry Gossett, because I considered myself somebody who kind of worked in my community to make things happen, and I am absolutely in awe of Larry Gossett. I haven't said this to you yet, but I'll just say it right now. I have had this opportunity, in the course of the campaign. I was out down there at El Centro de la Raza, and if you go there, go up to the top floor, and there's this picture of a younger Larry Gossett and a younger Roberto Maestas, and there's this spirit of resolve as they're getting ready to take over city council chambers, which they did. By the way, I haven't figured out how to do that yet. But they were prepared to do it. They were prepared to do it, and every chance I get. And so when I saw Larry, I actually asked him, what were you thinking then, and how were you feeling? I asked him some other stories, and I learned about other things he'd done. When a University of Washington was going to enter into an intercollegiate wrestling match with BYU, I believe it was BYU, which discriminated against black people. They didn't allow them into the school or to play sports. And he said that wasn't right. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, I told them they shouldn't do it. And they said, well, they were going to go ahead anyway. I said, what did you do? Well, they just went down in there and they sat down on the mats. And they didn't have a wrestling match that day. Right? They didn't have a wrestling match that day. And so I heard that story. I had the opportunity to go out, and Bernie White Bear Way was just named down in Discovery Park. We named that. And I discovered that Larry and a bunch of his colleagues, they went down and climbed the fences to join Bernie White Bear, who said, oh, by the way, this is our land, and we intend to occupy it. And there was a tradition there, right, of a multicultural coalition for justice, where people stood with each other. And there's this tradition in this town. And they did that. And Roberto told me about the occupation of the Beacon Hill School, about the sit-in at Franklin High, where they demand, where a girl was sent home because she wasn't straightening her hair. And there was a sit-in to correct that. And there's this tradition. So to all you kids out there listening, disrupt athletic events, take over the school, occupy federal property, right? And they're going to name things after you, right? We got Gossett Place. We got Roberto Maestas Festival Way up on Beacon Hill. We got Bernie White Bear Way. And I wasn't elected early enough to know that there's a Santos Place up at Sandpoint, Bob Santos as well, another of the Gang of Four. Actually, there's a different lesson there, and you all know what the lesson is. You all know what the lesson is, which is you stand up for what's right. You stand up for what's right. You try to shine a light on injustice, and you work to build a coalition, and you work to be effective, and you work for change. And so I can't think of any better and more fitting tribute to Larry than this, which is it's a long career of giving voice to the voiceless and for social justice and change, and that people who are too young, too poor, too downtrodden by circumstances to advocate for themselves will now have a place to be safe and begin a new life. I can't think of a better way to honor your legacy. Thank you, Larry.
I want to introduce Uncle Bob, Uncle Bob Santos, who is then going to introduce Larry Gossett. Come on up.
Yeah. Mrs. Gossett, Rhonda, Larry, how you doing, man? If it wasn't for Larry, we'd still have Rufus King County, right? Rufus, or we'd still have Empire Way. There'd only be the Gang of Three. But Larry, I've been with you a couple of decades now, through the 60s, and where we had Roberto and Bernie White Bear. They were sort of feisty guys, party people. Larry's a little boring, you know. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He does have 3 children. Him and Rhonda do have 3 children. So that's cool. But Larry, you're joining the club, and Mayor McGinn talked about Santos Place, Roberto Maesta's Festival Way, and Bernie White Bear Way. So join the club. It's really quite an honor to members of the Gang of Four to be acknowledged like this, and no other person that I know of deserves this kind of recognition than Larry Gossett. From the very first, back in the 60s, very dedicated guy. He and Aaron and Elmer Dixon would meet at Mrs. Dixon's home, and they'd sort of map out what they were going to do with the city. Larry decided education, to clean up the educational system, and from then on, Larry's been our person. He's been our advocate for social justice, social change. So I want to have Larry come up here, please. I think you get one of these plaques, too. Hey, Alan.
I'd like to begin by thanking all of you for being here and sharing this experience and very special occasion with me on this afternoon. The honor of having a 62-unit facility, apartment complex named after you is quite a privilege. But the reason it's even more important to me is the residents that are staying here, the homeless, the disadvantaged, the poor, who are much more likely than not don't get opportunities to live in clean, decent environment and pay a reasonable rent. Nobody in this facility will have to pay more, and this is my mother, dear Johnny Gossett Kelly here. Nobody will have to pay, my dear, more than 30% of their income. So if they make $300, they only have to pay $100 in rent. And we got just thousands of people in this city and every metropolitan area that come into agencies like the Low Income Housing Institute or the Central Area Motivation Program, where they're paying 65, 70, or even 80% of all the money they have coming in for rent. So it's really special for me to have this facility named in my honor. I want to very quickly, so that I don't forget, thank the LIHI board. I don't know where the president is. Okay. The president and Sharon Lee for the outstanding work that they do in the greater Seattle area. Why don't y'all give it up for them? You know, there are government housing agencies, and Carrie Lou Gossett, my auntie, my uncle's wife, is here, and I'm very happy that she's here. But there are government housing agencies, HUD, Seattle Housing Authority, and at the county level, King County Housing Authority, to build thousands and thousands of units of housing for poor people. And they should be building a lot more. But it is special when you have community-based organizations. Frank Chop mentioned it early. About 10 or 15 people got together here locally and said, we need a community-based housing program that's developed and built from the ground up. And we're going to stick together and demand that housing for poor people be built. And now they started nearly 20 years ago, And under Sharon's and the board's leadership, they are one of the top producers of housing for low-income people, not only in King County or the state of Washington, in the nation. They've created more than 1,000 units of housing for poor people in the great all over Washington state. So again, let's give it up for LIHI. Definitely be remiss if I didn't introduce some other members of my family, because my wife is here, Rhonda Gossett, sitting right next to Ernie. And my daughter, Nicole Gossett, is here. And to her left is her beautiful, vivacious daughter, my eldest granddaughter, Nia. Nia's in the Talk to her after this and ask her what she want to be. I want to be either a doctor. If that don't work out, I want to get elected president of the United States of America. That's great. My brother, Glenn Wayne Gossett. Sister, Teresa Gossett. I mentioned my aunt a little earlier, Carrie Lou Gossett, but also joining her is her son, my first cousin, Floyd Gossett Jr. And another one of my sister, who was the first member of our family, Dow, to move up into the Seattle area. Her name was Editha, my mother's oldest sister. I'm really happy because one of her daughters, Denise Anderson, is here with us. And sickle cell anemia is an important disease that particularly impacts African Americans in our community. And Denise, and Denise's mother, my mother's oldest sister, starting from the time she was just 2 or 3 months old, was told that because she has sickle cell anemia, she wouldn't live before 5, she wouldn't live before 11. And now she's the oldest, or one of the oldest, persons living with sickle cell anemia in the state of Washington. Let's give it up for Denise. And Denise's son is here with us, Keith, my cousin Ifoma. And if I missed any relatives, please forgive me. But I couldn't be successful as a King County Council member, as a politician. And I know that the mayor and Dow Constantine and the other politicians, Frank Chop, from whom you've heard, will testify and agree with me on this, that we could not do anything, Mom, as elected officials that really are genuine about serving the people if it weren't for our staff. So I want to take a moment and introduce the 4 persons that are on my personal staff. They are the Chief of Staff, Cindy Domingo. Cindy. Michelle Clark is right behind her. To Michelle's right is Camila Brown. She's the one. She's the nice, polite voice that you hear when you call my office. And last but certainly not least, Larry Evans is here in the house. Because I want to have an opportunity for all of you to visit with the residents and see some of the units here, I just want to share one story, but it's really poignant. It's really relevant for this occasion, so please bear with me. And I think it will color significantly why you will realize why this is such a special honor for me. I also want to introduce one of our community's religious leaders in the community. Pastor Williams from Mount Zion Baptist Church is in the house, and his lovely wife. Could y'all raise your hand? He's doing a stellar job at one of the biggest black churches in our community. I think you appreciate why this is so special to me. 45 years ago, 1966, the signature experience of my life took place, and it was joining VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America. And I was sent from the central area of Seattle, where I was raised, to central Harlem in New York City as a 20-year-old college student. Now, when I went into VISTA, I was like Professor Harris, I was like a lot of students. I was just into meism. You know about that. I wanted to get a degree so I could make money and, take care of myself and have some nice vines and a nice car. I wasn't really altruistic. I wasn't thinking about anybody else. I went into VISTA not to serve the poor, y'all, and that's what VISTA is, a program like the International Peace Corps. You have to live in the communities where you work. I went in because it was a legitimate alternative to going to Vietnam. But VISTA, folks, ended up changing my life. And the biggest impact that it had on me was the housing situation of the folks that lived in Harlem and on the Lower East Side, the two communities. I ended up having a community to live, to work in. I lived on 117th between Lenox and 7th Avenue in Harlem, New York. That's where I was sent. And in Seattle, I lived on 18th and Alder in the central area, on Alder Street between 18th and 19th. On the block I lived in, even though we were poor, and in the 60s and 70s, the central area was all black, just like Harlem. But there was only 110 folks that lived on the block that I lived in Seattle. 50 on one side, about 60 on the back. All of us had, we lived in the ghetto. We were mostly poor, low income. But we lived in these big 3- and 4-bedroom houses. We had a little space in Seattle. We were segregated. The reason Martin Luther King Jr., the namesake of our great county, came to Seattle one time was over the issue of housing. November 7th, 1961. He came here at the request of one of the former pastors at Mount Zion, the pastor emeritus of Mount Zion, Reverend McKinney, invited him here because 88% of all the black people of Seattle were forced to live in the central area community in 1961, and we wanted open housing. We wanted people to be able to live wherever they could afford to without regard to race. And believe me, in Seattle, that was very difficult. But in Harlem, the first thing that I and one other VISTA had to do was count the people on the block that we lived on. On that one block, Lenox to 7th, 117th Street, 9,866 people, 1,512 of whom were under the age of 12. And I said, this is crazy. Poverty, I may have been low income, working class here in Seattle, but poverty and what it does to people became very clear to me while I was a VISTA volunteer. And the reason I call it the signature experience is because it ended up changing my life forever. I said, I got to do away with this. Meism couldn't mean anything else to me anymore. It ain't about me. It ain't about me having some nice clothes or a car or a spacious house. If I had, to the extent I have energy, time, skills, it's got to go for the people, because in the richest country in the world, nobody should have to live the way these people, who I also, quite as Cal Ernie had a special affinity to, because everybody in Harlem was black like me, and that made this commitment even stronger. But I committed to eliminating poverty. I committed to being very critical of the economic system under which we live here in this country, capitalism. I committed to being a warrior for black power, which was spreading across the country at that time. I committed to being an adherent to democratic socialism, because I thought that economic philosophy would be better for poor and working people in our country. And I committed to returning to my home community and working in every capacity that I could to create change in a cooperative, collective way for poor and disadvantaged people in my home community. And I'm so proud that the culmination of those efforts, the 1960s, organizing the Black Student Union and the Black Panther Party for self-defense, advocating for and feeding hungry children before they went to school. And the government finally, in the late 1970s, set up a program to feed the hungry children. But I don't think they would have done it if it wasn't for the work of the Black Panthers. Starting free clinics for poor people who couldn't pay to go to a doctor in the 1960s. In the 1970s, working with Roberto Maestas and starting El Centro de la Raza that the mayor talked about. Working in 1977 to create MOVE, making our votes effective, where blacks and Latinos and Asians and natives, we all came together and said, we can, if we're together, we can determine who's going to be the mayor of Seattle, Washington. And during that year, Charlie Roy, was running against Paul Schell. There was about 50-50 in terms of people in this community that supported him. We mobilized the entire minority community to support Charlie Roy, and he won. And that had a big impact on us who saw ourselves as activists, as progressives, as revolutionaries, that we would be able to influence electoral politics in this community. So we learned a lot and moved on into the 1980s to organize the Rainbow Coalition. And then I got another special opportunity to become the executive director of the Central Area Motivation Program, the oldest anti-poverty agency in our city. And I'm so honored to have had the opportunity to be its executive director from 79 to 93 when I got elected to the county council. And on the county council, I've been lucky to work with a lot of progressive politicians and get the support of Eddie Rye and Ernie Dunston and many people that are here for a lot of progressive changes that Dow and others have talked about earlier that has meant so much to the community. But in conclusion, the building of Gossett Place, this facility, and the special honor of having it named after me is something that will live in my heart and mind forever. And I'd like to thank everybody who was responsible for that, for doing it. Thank you all for being here.